The movie opens near Hillsdale, New Jersey, where two friends are on a road trip, using a paper map to find their way. After some time, their car gets a flat tire, forcing them to stop in the middle of the woods. One girl steps out to fix it, while the other stays inside to relax. Suddenly, a shadowy figure appears in the background and drags the girl into the forest. The story then flashes back to a high school student named Sarah, who attends group therapy sessions after the death of her mother. Her father, John, waits for her outside. John is a pastor and the father of two daughters, Sarah and Rebecca. They share a close bond, though John's protectiveness can be a bit much. Later, while shopping for a Christmas tree, Sarah complains that his strictness keeps her from ever going to parties. John dismisses it and continues shopping. At the register, a stranger suddenly claims their chosen tree as his. When the man becomes aggressive, John avoids confrontation and steps back. That night at home, Sarah playfully teases her father for letting another man walk off with their Christmas tree. Later that evening, John approaches Sarah and surprises her by allowing her to go to the party. Overjoyed, Sarah hugs her father tightly. The family then heads to church, where John delivers his sermon, reflecting on the earlier incident and reminding his congregation about choosing peace over violence. Meanwhile, in another part of town, a drug dealer named Arlo meets with a gangster named Kady for a deal. When Arlo reaches into Kady's car trunk to collect his payment, Kady suddenly slams the trunk lid onto his back, knocking him down. He then cruelly snaps Arlo's already injured leg and forces his face against the car's exhaust, making him inhale toxic fumes. Back at the church, Sarah says goodbye to her father before heading to the party. On the way, she stops at a gas station to refuel John's car, unaware that Kady is there too. As she pumps gas, she hears muffled screams coming from Kady's trunk. Realizing someone's trapped inside, she panics. Kady notices her suspicion, and fearing she'll call the police, rushes to capture her. Sarah quickly jumps into her car and speeds off, but Kady gives chase. Frightened, Sarah calls her father to explain what's happening and where she is. Before she can escape, Kady overtakes her vehicle, forcing her off the road and causing her to crash. He gets out, zip-ties her hands to the steering wheel, and pushes the car into a nearby lake. Moments later, John arrives at the scene, only to find his daughter's car submerged and Sarah already dead. The tragedy shatters John's faith and sends the once peaceful pastor into a dark downward spiral. After the funeral, a detective named Jed visits John and his family. He explains that Sarah's death wasn't just a traffic accident. Her hands were found zip-tied to the steering wheel. Jed promises the heartbroken pastor that he'll find the person responsible. Meanwhile, Kady calls his brother Vic to brag about the large stash of drugs and money he's carrying. The two agree to meet the next day to split the goods. Determined to solve the case, Detective Jed heads to the gas station where Sarah stopped before her death. He reviews hours of surveillance footage and eventually spots Kady's car, noting down the license plate number. Later, Kady is seen driving along a quiet road when he's pulled over by what seems to be a police officer. The officer approaches, but before Kady can react, the man injects him with a sedative, knocking him unconscious. That night, Vic waits for his brother to show up, but Kady never arrives. Worried, Vic informs their boss, Otto. Enraged by the news, Otto demands Kady be found immediately, since the missing drugs and money are worth a fortune. He reveals that every batch of their product contains a hidden tracker and orders his men to locate Kady using it. Meanwhile, Kady awakens in an underground bunker deep in the woods, bound and tortured. His captor shocks him repeatedly with electricity and coldly informs him that from now on, his name is Number 21. At the same time, Otto's goons raid one of Kady's known drug dens, roughing up everyone connected to him. Eventually, they find a man holding the tracking device, and the signal leads them straight to Kady's location. The next morning, John visits his younger daughter, Rebecca, and tries to comfort her by giving her a bracelet as a gift. When she refuses to take it, he quietly slips it back into his pocket. Later, John meets Detective Jed at a bar. Over drinks, Jed begins sharing something deeply personal, saying he's ready to offer John the same chance he once received years ago. He recounts a story from a decade earlier about Quinn Brady, a notorious rapist who gave each of his victims a number before torturing and killing them. Jed, then a young detective, led the case that brought Brady to justice. But after years behind bars, Brady was unexpectedly granted early release. Jed was furious yet powerless to stop it. Tragically, soon after gaining his freedom, Brady sought revenge, murdering Jed's pregnant wife while Jed was at work. Jed explains that he understands exactly what it feels like to lose someone to evil and how unbearable that pain can be. He then adds that although Quinn Brady was later caught, it wasn't the justice system that got him. Finally, Jed leans closer and makes John an offer, 1 minute alone with the man responsible for Sarah's death. He then reveals the shocking truth. He's the one who kidnapped Kady. John agrees to Jed's offer, and they drive deep into the woods to a secluded cabin owned by the detective. Beneath the cabin lies a hidden underground bunker, where Kady is chained to the wall. Jed presents evidence proving Kady's guilt and urges John to take revenge, insisting it will help him cope with the pain of losing Sarah. Jed explains that he once did the same thing to Quinn Brady after his wife's murder, claiming it brought him peace. He tells John to pick a weapon, and John reluctantly chooses an ice pick. As he approaches Kady, he presses the tip against the man's ear, but can't go through with it. His conscience stops him. Jed tries to reassure him, saying he doesn't have to kill Kady, just make him suffer, but John refuses and demands to leave. Disappointed and frustrated, Jed lashes out, saying he built this place for people like John who need justice. He then shocks John with electricity, knocking him unconscious. When John wakes, he finds himself strapped to a wheelchair in another room. Jed proudly shows him another captive, a man sealed inside a coffin for a week, accused of raping an elderly woman. As John looks around, he realizes there are many more prisoners. Over the years, Jed has been kidnapping rapists, murderers, and pedophiles, assigning them numbers instead of names. He invites grieving families to exact revenge on them, driving both the captives and their tormentors into madness. Jed refers to these captives as subhumans, explaining that the torture has broken them to the point they've become feral and cannibalistic. Among them is Quinn Brady, now known only as Number 1. To continue his twisted cycle, Jed drags Kady into the cage with the subhumans and locks him inside. Meanwhile, outside the cabin, Vic and his crew arrive, tracking Kady's signal to the secluded spot. Down below, at Jed's command, the subhumans tear into Kady, while John is forced to watch the brutal scene unfold. Amid the chaos, John manages to break free from his restraints and hide before Jed notices his absence. Believing John has escaped, Jed rushes toward the exit, only to run straight into Vic and his men. At the same time, John finds the cage keys and tosses them to the subhumans, setting them loose. As Vic's crew storms into the basement, searching for Kady, they panic at the sight of the feral captives and open fire. The subhumans retaliate viciously, ripping through the gunmen in a bloody frenzy. Caught in the crossfire, Jed is mauled by the very monsters he created. Seizing the opportunity, John runs upstairs, searching for car keys to make his escape. But before he can find them, several subhumans follow him up, attacking from all sides. They drag him to the floor, snarling and clawing. Among them is Quinn Brady, the man who once murdered Jed's wife. Barely alive, a mangled Jed limps upstairs with a shotgun. With nothing left to lose, he opens fire, killing Quinn Brady and the remaining subhumans in the room. Severely wounded and bleeding out, Jed collapses. John kneels beside him, trying to help, but it's too late. Realizing Jed won't survive, John stays with him until the detective takes his final breath. Outside, the remaining subhumans climb to the surface, growling as they circle the cabin, searching for a way in. Realizing the danger isn't over, John suddenly remembers his younger daughter, Rebecca, and knows he has to get home to protect her at all costs. Determined to survive, he grabs a machete and scavenges whatever weapons he can find inside the house. He then jumps onto Jed's motorcycle and speeds off through the woods. But as he takes a sharp turn, he crashes into one of the escaped prisoners. The creature, a subhuman with a rope still hanging from his neck, lunges at him. John fights back fiercely, killing it by jamming its head into the spinning bike wheel, decapitating it. Before he can catch his breath, another subhuman leaps at him, and John slashes its throat open. Moments later, a third one armed with a shovel attacks, swinging wildly. John ducks, slices off the attacker's legs, and drives the machete straight into its chest. Just then, a loud van horn blares through the night, the same sound from the film's opening scene. The story comes full circle as John rushes toward the vehicle to rescue the terrified girl inside. He decapitates another subhuman closing in on her, but before he can pull her to safety, something grabs him from underneath the van and drags him away. The remaining subhumans swarm the van, attacking the helpless girl inside. John kills the subhuman that dragged him away and soon finds himself facing two more attackers. A brutal fight breaks out, tumbling down into a river, where John finally overpowers them and emerges bloodied but alive. Exhausted, he pushes through the woods until he spots a quiet farmhouse belonging to an elderly couple, Ed and his wife. Ed heads out to the barn to shred their Christmas tree, while his wife stays inside, enjoying her coffee. Moments later, their dog starts barking, alerting her to something outside. When she goes to check, she finds a man tinkering with their truck. It's Kady, still alive and desperate to escape. Panicked, the woman turns to run, but Kady grabs her and strangles her before dragging her lifeless body across the yard. Hearing the commotion, Ed rushes out but is quickly overpowered. Just then, John arrives at the farmhouse. Kady hurls him through a window, and the two men engage in a violent fight inside the house. Overmatched, John retreats into the barn and tries to climb up, but Kady yanks him down and pins him under a heavy metal press. As he mocks John, Kady reveals Sarah's final words, "Where is my daddy?" The cruelty fuels John's rage, but the pain keeps him trapped. In the struggle, his foot hits the shredder's power switch, starting the machine. Reaching into his pocket, John finds the bracelet he had meant to give Rebecca. With a final burst of strength, he uses it to stab Kady in the eye, freeing himself. Blinded and screaming, Kady stumbles backward, and John shoves him straight into the shredder. The machine roars as Kady is pulled in, shredded alive, and reduced to silence. John picks up the bracelet from the ground, a reminder of both his pain and his purpose. The next scene shows him attending the same grief counseling sessions that his daughter once went to. There, he opens up about his loss, finally sharing the emotions he had buried for so long. The group listens with compassion, offering him comfort and understanding. Time passes, and John begins to heal. During a church service, he reads a Bible verse about God being an armor that gives strength to defend oneself, a reflection of how far he's come. Later, he takes his daughter Rebecca to her softball practice. As they settle in, a grown man storms onto the field and rudely kicks Rebecca out, claiming he wants to use the arena. John steps in calmly and asks the man to be reasonable, but the stranger mocks and insults him instead. Unlike the man he was at the beginning of the story, John doesn't back down this time. He stands his ground, defending himself and his daughter, showing that while his heart has healed, his spirit has learned to fight for what truly matters. If you enjoyed this video, don't be shy to hit the like button, and if you disliked it, hit the dislike button twice, just to be sure. It would be best if you watched the whole movie. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe for more videos like this.